Welcome, everyone. My name is Vipin Tek, and I'm a Senior Director at Ashoka. Thank you for joining us this morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you're calling in from. So we are on day 2 of the Ashoka Changemakers Summit. And on day 1, we have had over 3,000 attendees, which I thought was pretty cool. And we are hoping we can top that up on day 2. So today, I'm here to facilitate what I'm hoping would be a very engaging and interesting conversation with some 2 really powerful, wonderful people. And so hang in with me while I introduce both of them. So first I have Alison Coates, who is the Global Head of Future Skills in Corporate Sustainability at HSBC. Alison has worked for HSBC for 11 years in both Canada and UK. She works in the HSBC's corporate sustainability function and is responsible for leading HSBC's global approach to future skills. So a word on future skills, they are focused on 2 areas: increasing financial capability and employability, and is designed to positively impact HSBC's customers, employees, and communities they operate in. Prior to her current role, Alison has led HSBC's global education and the UK charity programs. And prior to that, she was the acting head of the corporate sustainability for HSBC Bank Canada. Alison studies politics at the University of British Columbia and business management at the Carleton Polytechnic University. Alison, welcome.
Thanks very much, Vipin.
And next, we have one of my favorite Ashoka fellows, Ricarda Seixas. He's the founder and the CEO of the edtech company LifeEd by Mom. Mom, for those of you who are not familiar, stands for Maternity as Masters. LifeEd is a digital platform which unlocks the learning potential of life, transforming employees' life transitions into professional growth, benefiting both companies and employees. Ricarda comes from a managerial background in Nokia and Microsoft. In 2018, she was named the Fortune's most influential and innovative women. Ricarda is an Ashoka Fellow, and her work has been praised in reports such as the Skilling Challenge and the Changemaker Hers. She's also the best-selling author of Mom, Maternity is a Masters that makes men and women stronger. Welcome, Ricarda.
Hello, good to see you.
All right, so also just to ensure and weave in your audience as your participation in the session, let me introduce my colleague Shafat from our community team in Ashoka and Ireland. Shafat, do you want to quickly say hi?
Yes, hello everyone. My name is Shafat Khan. I'll be here to take all of your questions and comments and bring it to our panelists. So thank you for being here.
Thank you, Shafat. All right, so just to frame our conversation, I would love to share with you just a couple of slides. So the place where we are coming from is to say we are living in exponential times, right? All of us have, we talk every day about articles which said 60% of some of the best jobs of tomorrow doesn't exist today. And we are all in environments where we actually hear the impact of the rapid pace of change which is happening in the world. But I really like this slide because it just really captures a moment in why this is so different, right? So if you look at human history, change has always been part of human life on the planet. But what is unprecedented, what is evolutionary, is the fact in this moment in time is that the pace at which change is happening is exploding, right? And you can see that in the way, especially after in the around 2000s when the microprocessor came around, the pace at which change was happening started exploding. So that's one perspective. It's just not about just change, right? What kind of change is happening? So this is something which happened a year or 2 years ago, and it still fascinates me, right? So Sophia is the first social humanoid robot ever to given citizenship. Isn't that fascinating, right? Like she's been given citizenship. Do any of you want to guess which country gave her citizenship, Alison or Ricarda? Wild guess?
The US?
No, Saudi Arabia. Isn't that fascinating, right? So that's something about the kind of change and the impact it is having about the potential to change life as we know it. this is the modern world. It's what problems are outrunning the solutions. And it's not, the difference also is that the problems we are facing, climate change, unemployment, migration, they are not just a problem led by a country or a particular region. These are global problems which requires global solutions. And this last piece which I want to address is in Ashoka, we talk about this idea of the new inequality, which is to say, especially over the last 3 to 4 years, the rapid pace of change has had an unfortunate impact on human life. One, the whole idea of the rich people getting richer and poor people getting poorer, so the equity gap is increasing. But second, which is, I would say, is a much more dangerous trend, is this global rise of a particular brand of politics, which says us versus them. I'm suffering, they are the problem, right? So these are the two major trends, which is indirectly and indirectly connected to the rapid pace at which the change is happening. So why are we sharing this? Which is to say, many of the jobs people will have in the future don't yet exist. They will use technologies that haven't yet been invented to find solutions for problems that haven't yet emerged. So this is the world we are working in. This is the world we are parenting in. And while it might seem overwhelming for a lot of us, what we believe is that the possibility to create exponential change in this moment in time in human history is also exponential, right? And we call this the Changemaker era. And I'll stop sharing my slide with this particular screen, which I think is really, really important for us to keep in mind, is that what got us here is not going to get us to where we need to go. And I think this, and I'm sharing this in part also because of the conversation we are about to have with Alison and Ricardo. So what if, let's just maybe start with something more personal, just to juice up the conversation. Alison and Ricardo, I would love for you to just share 2 questions. One is, what is something which you learn, your kids teach you? Something which you learn from your kids. Who wants to start? Okay.
I'm happy to go with, and thank you very much for having me today, and delighted to join everyone here. I guess I'll add to my bio. I am also a parent, and I returned to work during the pandemic. So I spent the first couple months trying to work and also care for a child. So this is something that's really close to my heart. In terms of what I learned from my kids, I mean, like, a lot. Every single day is a learning opportunity, and he's still pretty young, so I'm working my way through it. But I think something I've really sort of tried to tap into a lot more lately is curiosity. My little one is just over 18 months old, and so he's really in that phase of discovering the world. He doesn't know what anything is, but he's developing the faculties to start to identify things. But he doesn't know what things are called. He doesn't know how they work. And so he just tries everything out. He tries things one way, then another way. He, in his own way, asks questions by pointing at things and sort of getting me to show him how they work. And we all live these very busy, fast-paced, often very like technology-driven lives. And him doing that has made me sort of step back and go, right, like, why is something like that? Why does it work that way? Why does this bounce and that doesn't? And really sort of get in that mindset of even questioning, the things that I think that I know as truths. And so I think it's been fantastic to just have him take me back to do that, to being more curious. And then starting to apply that in my life about things that maybe I don't know a lot about and need to learn more about, and sort of take the way he goes about it and apply that to my life.
Thank you, Alison.
I think that, I agree with Alison that they teach you every day to look at things differently. And nothing is obvious to their eyes, even when they grow up. I fear the moment in which things will start being obvious to their eyes, because I hope it will never stop, this feeling. What happened in my life when I became a mother is that I really learned that I was needed. And this is like, it's been a major discovery for me. I was needed, I am needed. And I can make a difference by loving instead of expecting to be loved. And this in a way translated into an idea that the responsibility I feel is my power. Mm. So my children taught me that caring is a superpower. And this, oh wow, this has been like, this was my engine in the last 12 years.
Yeah. That's beautiful, Ricarda. Caring is my superpower. For me, I think it's two things. One is this capacity to wonder, right? Like it just touches me very deeply. Like there is their entire perspective to life starts from the perspective of wonder, this mysterious thing of life, which we don't have any. We think we have a formula for it, but there is something about that perspective which just really feels very important to me. And also this whole idea of, I think there are more priorities in life is to say eat, sleep, play. I'm like, I think they have ticked off all the more important things in life, right? Between those three things. So before we transition, I also want to spend a bit more time on parenting and your children. So if either one of you could just speak about what's a skill which you're learning or you've learned with your children while parenting them, which has helped you in your workplace? A skill, something which in the act and the journey of parenting.
I can start if you want, yeah. So actually I tried it. I tried it the other way around. And the skill that I brought from work to home, which is also interesting, is saying no. Because like most parents, especially mothers probably, but also fathers, I had problems in saying no to my children I started when they were 4 and 1, so very early. I couldn't really say no. And then I thought, but how come I am so good at saying no at the office and I can't do it at home? I'm still the same person. Should be the same skill. And so I thought, what is the difference? And then I realized that at work, my no was very respectful and motivated, because I was saying no to something that, I was selecting the no's and I was giving them to my coworkers with a lot of respect, making clear the reason why I was saying no. And they could feel I respected them by saying this no. And so I tried to apply this to the way I say no at home. And I'll tell you, if you come to my place, kids are saying, no, mom, don't explain to me why it's no. Just say no, it's fine. I don't want to know why. So it's become a nightmare for them now.
I love that. I sometimes try to explain my no's, and of course my 18-month-old just looks at me like, I don't know what you're saying. It does not compute, but very much like yourself, I try to demonstrate the reason why I'm saying that to him. And, it's not just because I don't want him to enjoy himself or have just one more piece of banana, which is a regular refrain in our house. I think one of the things I learned, and I really needed this actually when I came back into work because of that juggle between working and caring, and this is sort of so it sounds like a somewhat technical term, but it's that cognitive load management. So I think we're bombarded all the time with a lot of information, a lot of things that we could or should be doing, a lot of different competing priorities and demands. And that can be, I think that's very exhausting sometimes, and that can be a lot to take on. I think I once heard that when he was president, Obama would only wear suits of 2 colors and dress shirts of 2 colors so that he didn't have to make decisions about his outfit each day, because he just wanted to maximize his sort of cognitive load towards, the big issues that he needed to focus on. And so I don't know, maybe we could all simplify our wardrobes and and that might help. But I think with parenting, I realized that there's no shortage of information and no shortage of sort of things coming at you that you need to deal with all the time. And so I've learned quite a bit through my little one to really filter for what's important. And and then, that helps to maximize in terms of how much energy you have and how much you can engage. So it's about sort of not sweating the small stuff, not making things, more complex than they need to be, and just focusing on what really matters. Are they fed? Are they happy? Are they sleeping? And are they healthy? And I think, when we have kids, that's one of the big things. It's just, are they healthy and enjoying themselves? And if you've got that, then, you're doing okay. And I think we could take that into the workplace a bit more. Sometimes we don't need to do absolutely everything and be perfect at absolutely everything. Focus on what your main objectives are and filter everything that you do through that. Is this driving, what I want to drive, what's important to drive? And if it's not, let it go.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that, Alison, because I think there is something about being reminded about what is truly important instead of just getting carried away by the amount of mental power we tend to think about, we spend investing in what does other people think, or what will happen if I say no to my manager, and all that. All those are important, but there's some things about just zoning on saying what's truly important in this moment, which I think is so important, especially in a world where we have very little time. So I just want to connect these two pieces together and open it up for a conversation. So we talked about the rapidly changing world, and we talked about, your children, and I just want to put those two pieces together. So as I was working on our conversation this morning, I ran into a Gallup poll study. So the world is changing, companies are changing, they have to change, right? But here's what this really stood out for me. So the Gallup poll study was around the employee engagement. And this is what they're saying. The way we work is changing. And they did a survey. Unfortunately, this survey is only for people in the United States, so please bear that in mind. But they talked about the percentage of people in the workplaces in the United States who are highly involved, enthusiastic, and committed to their work and workplace is 38%. 38%. The percentage of workers who are actively disengaged, those who have miserable work experiences and spread their unhappiness to their colleagues, remained at the same level as, which I think was 14%, because it's the same, they were comparing it this year's study from last year. But here's the statistic which really stood out. The remaining 54% of workers are not engaged. They are psychologically unattached to their work and company. These employees put time, but not energy or passion into their work. Not engaged employees typically show up to work, contribute the minimum effort required. They are also on the lookout for better employment opportunities and quickly leave their company for a slightly better offer. So what stood out for me in reading that article was the fact that it is scary because employee engagement and employee performance are highly correlated, right? So there's one piece of the puzzle. The second piece of the puzzle into this context came COVID, right? And what we are beginning to see increasingly is there's artificial separation we used to have between my work and my life seems to be collapsing on top of each other, right? Parents are now becoming the new teachers. Parents are doing 3 different roles at the same time on an average day. And we have increasingly starting to see the impact of it, whether it is on Zoom fatigue, their well-being, etc. So more and more, what we are beginning to see is the fact that the conversation we want to provoke is how can companies come up with creative, innovative ways to better support their employees to thrive in this rapidly changing world? And for our conversation today, while at least in the US, there has been companies who are now doing a lot more work around paid leave. They're offering couples therapy. Imagine that, like companies are offering couples therapy. I just find that fascinating. While that body of work is important, what we want to point to and explore in our conversation and our time together today is to talk about this idea of how do you support employees to be change makers, and the best way to support them to be change makers is actually getting to turn them to their children and bring their parenting role into the forefront. So I'll just pause there, and Ricardo, I'm just going to draw you in for a second. And the question which I would love for you to kick us off with is to just tell us a bit more about how do we change the dialogue in the workplace, right? So how do we move the conversation from employee engagement to employee fulfillment, which is where employees find meaning, purpose, and well-being in their work. So if you could just talk to us a bit more about what have you seen about the rapid pace at which the world is changing and the impact it is having on employees.
Okay, this is a very easy question. I'm joking. No, this is Italian humor. So the interesting, you mentioned this fact that companies are paying for a couple consultancy to help people. So the point is, I think that today we're all seeing our private life and our working life as separate and conflicting for time is not longer sustainable. So what we have seen in the last 12 months, 10 months with COVID is what actually was already there. And basically mothers were already living that reality, but now everybody is seeing it clearly, which is as long as you consider roles to be conflicting with each other, you create an unsustainable situation in which you also have to live the paradox in which you have to recreate in the companies what's already happening outside. Because, for example, if you take the skills that Alison mentioned, managing complexity, setting priorities, focus, those are soft skills that we regularly see in the list of the most needed soft skills in the world of work. The most recent list was released by World Economic Forum recently. 8 out of the 10 skills they mention are soft skills. Soft skills are the ones which allow us to go forward at the speed of change. Technical skills change and machines can take our place, soft skills are needed. But how difficult is it to train those soft skills in artificial environments? Just think about how challenging it is for a company to train someone in managing complexity in a classroom, while our roles outside of the company are giving us many opportunities for training complexity and many opportunities for training many more skills. So the point is, as long as we separate, and we have seen in the last year this is impossible, but this was already impossible before, we generate an unsustainable situation for humans. This is not sustainable. This wasn't sustainable before, it's more visibly not sustainable today. Is there a way to change the conversation? Because at the same time, of course, people are feeling disengaged. Why are you disengaged? Because the company does not see you. The company is speaking with someone who just reflects one part of you and pretends not to see all your complexity. We all carry different roles with us. We have different dimensions. And if you see me in all my dimensions, I'm gonna feel engaged. And especially if you see me when I'm transitioning, becoming a mother, becoming a father, getting sick, changing work. We have so many transitions in our lives. And during those periods, people that are seen will feel much more engaged to their companies. And those are the moments in which companies tend to step back. I don't want to see that. In the best case scenario, I'm going to pretend it didn't happen. No? So people are disengaged. So what's the way to change this conversation is very simply, and this is incredibly simple, changing the framework. And this is what innovation is about. You don't invent new things. We don't need to add new stuff, add new services, add new content. We need to enlarge the frame in a way that puts together all our incredible complex dimensions and allow us to be seen for whatever we are, for all the richness that we carry. And then in a wonderful, miraculous way, all those talents and resources and possibilities will be brought to the market. So this is about changing the framework for me.
That's beautiful, Ricardo. We have a colleague, Diana Wells, who is the ex-president of Ashoka. She used to say, if you get people to see differently, they will do differently, right? So when you say change the framework, it's basically getting, for me, the way I understand it is to say, how do you get companies or employers or even people to look at the frame with which they are looking at the roles and the roles which they play in their life. So maybe Alison, I just want to bring you in here. So you, if you could just speak to us a bit more about, in HSBC, what are you doing? What's your team doing around helping your employees learn the new skills into thriving in this new world? And I know you said you have those HSBC 3 skills, so it would be great if you could just bring that into your conversation too.
Sure. So over the past couple of years, HSBC, we've done quite a bit of work to think about kind of what are key future skills for us within the organization. And certainly, as Ricardo said, there's those digital and technology skills, but what those need to be and are will evolve over time, and they're super important. But we know that for everyone across the organization, it's those soft skills that are going to be really important. That's what differentiates us from machines. It's what makes us human. It's what makes us add value. And those are all going to be really important. So we've done a piece of work to develop what we call our future skills curriculum. It's got sort of 9 skill areas, and then those are broken down into a number of sub-skills. I won't get into all the detail, but there's skills like curiosity, creativity, resilience, having a growth mindset. And those are skills that you don't necessarily it's not about develop them outside work, and there's ways to cultivate them through your life experiences. One of the things I love is we have a session on curiosity, and one of the main things you can do in there is just micro tries. So they have a little worksheet, and it just guides you a little bit on cultivating your curiosity. And I was looking at one this morning, and it was called the Caring Commute. And all you do is on your daily commute, and right now that may be, from your room to another room, or maybe in your morning walk. You just want to try and notice 5 new things. And it's that simple. And it's just bringing that in. So what we're trying to say to people is it's not about, just like, this is a skill I have to learn to specifically do this for your job, but it's a skill about just opening up your mind, doing that whenever in your life. It doesn't have to be sort of during your 9 to 5. Is then going to help you in terms of your job, hopefully help you, as Chris says, be more engaged and bring your whole self into the workplace. So it's a journey that we're just starting on, but one that's really exciting. This week, we're actually running a whole My Skills Festival where we have themes on each day: connectivity, creativity, curiosity. We've got expert speakers in talking about all the different areas. And yeah, so much of it is about the whole person. And not just who they are specifically in the workplace.
Yeah, it's interesting. What comes up for me just listening to both of you is the shift from moving from the human doing to the human being, right? Like, we are human beings for a reason, but we are always been focusing on the skills, whether it is strategy skills or how do you run your social media campaign, but to more seeing us as holistic beings. And it also struck me, Alison, as you were saying about curiosity, that was what you said your child is teaching you too, right? So you're already the expert in that topic. We have an Ashoka fellow in Canada, Mary Gordon, who runs this program called Roots of Empathy, where she brings to help elementary school children learn empathy. She brings these 6-month-old babies into the classroom. So the baby shows up saying, I'm the teacher. And the kids, the elderly students, learn empathy or practice the muscle of empathy watching these 6-month-old baby engage with the world. So this whole idea, and I think, Ricardo, you were touching on is to say, if 8 out of the 10 skills are soft skills, which according to the World Economic Forum, which you need to thrive, your children can be your greatest teachers. And guess what? They come for free. Like, you don't have to pay extra professional development fees.
Not exactly free, but yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think they come in with a different cost, but it's all a good one.
Less expensive than the fancy courses we sign up for.
It's a very long-term investment.
Yes, fair enough. So let me just switch gears here and just talk a bit about both of you. If you could touch on so maybe Alison, I'll start with you this time around. What have you noticed in the way HSBC has taken steps to support their employees in this rapidly changing world? And if you could just share that about the ones which has been the most beneficial to you, especially as a new mom.
Yeah, maybe I'll touch two things. I think one, in terms of the rapidly changing world, is that real focus on developing those soft skills and coming up with, a full curriculum, running this, massive festival that we're doing this week across all of our countries and geographies, to engage everyone on the subject of the future of work, what that might look like, being curious about it, and then thinking about the types of skills that each person may need to develop in order to get there. And we've heard a lot about, like you said, we don't know what the jobs of the future are going to be, but I think we do know to some extent what those human skills are that'll allow us to thrive, as they get there, and allow us to sort of be in the right position to take on, emerging opportunities as they come out, and sort of being in that mindset of constant learning. And that's one of the big conversations we're having in the organization, is switching to constant learning, but probably in smaller chunks, but whereas before we may have, I know a lot of people, for example, who work in healthcare, it's like you need to do your certain number of professional development hours a year. And that sort of mindset of like, I do this one course or this course and then I'm good. And now it's, I think, much more about constant learning, carving out little windows to either practice certain skills or to maybe read an article or watch a video or just something like that, just switching from thinking I need to do a course to constant learning. And I think that's a big piece that we're working on, that's going to support our people and have it fit into their lives maybe a little bit more organically. In terms of supporting parents and people with caring responsibilities, I think there's a couple of things that I really love that we've offered. So I went off on a year of maternity leave, which was fantastic, and I was super supported in order to be able to do that. And it allowed me to just have that time that I really wanted to be able to spend with my little one. I figured there's not very many, times we have these opportunities in our life, and I'd been working for quite a while, and yeah, it was great to just change it up and learn, a completely new set of skills. But I knew that in doing that, if I wanted to feel connected back to the organization, that I could as well. And one of the things that's offered is what we call KIT days, or keep in touch days, where you can actually come back. You can work half or a full day, whatever works for you. While you're on your leave, you're paid for those days. And it's just, some people use them especially as they're about to come back, and it just helps them reconnect so that on, day one, they're not sort of feeling like they're diving into the deep end of things. And I found that to be really helpful, and it's super flexible. There's no sort of, you must do this or you must do it in any sort of pattern. It's up to you to work out with your team and your manager what really works for you. And I just think it's a great initiative to just help people continue that dialogue, and also to just share what's happening in their own lives, in their personal lives, and be able to connect back with their colleagues. Because often, that was our other family, right? You spend a lot of time at work, and it's important that you're able to then bring in what you're going through and your experiences. The other thing that I love, and I actually didn't know this until I returned from leave, was that, so we have a number of global employee networks. We have a balance network focused on gender balance in the workplace, but we also have one called Nurture, which is a network for people who have caring responsibilities. So parents, but also people who may have other caring responsibilities. And it's fantastic. They send out resources. They've got, various like sessions you can sign up to. But one of the coolest things that they have been doing with some, very proactive people are actually right now, because we've all been in lockdown and often people had caring responsibilities and they were working, was they're actually offering activities for kids to be able to participate in online. So they knew that when it was term break for school, that might be really challenging for parents if they weren't off work. And so they actually came up with like weeks of activities for the kids to be able to sign up and participate in based on their different ages. They had basically summer camp over the month of August with tons of different stuff that the kids could do. And they could do webinars. Like we had people running webinars about like money management for kids and like budgeting and just like introducing them to the subject. So I think there was probably a lot of kids out there who thought, oh, maybe my parents' workplace is a little bit cooler than I think it is. My little one is too little to engage really with any online activity, but I was like, oh man, I so wish he could sign up for some of these treasure hunts, you name it, they had it. So it's a fantastic resource, and it's just nice knowing that you've got a group there that you can reach out to, that you can ask questions to, that this provides a network where you can talk to other people who are going through the same thing.
Yeah. And I think you're touching on also the fact that the people who cares also needs to be cared for. Otherwise, that will lead to exhaustion, right? So that's an interesting piece. And one, Ricardo, I want to draw you in here, but I do want to respond. Alison, the last time we spoke, a comment which you made, which stayed with me, was to say when you took time off for your maternity leave, it was an opportunity for other employees to step in, and that helped them build and grow their skills. What a phenomenal way to think about leadership development and new talent development inside a company or an organization.
Yeah. And this is something I'm super passionate about, because I think we need to make sure when we have the discussion about parental leave and all that we also acknowledge the development opportunities that provides sometimes for other people. I'm passionate about it because obviously, it was great that happened for me, and there was somebody who stepped in to do my role, and that was a great opportunity for them. But certainly a few years ago in my career, I covered a maternity leave. So you mentioned I was the acting head of sustainability in Canada, and that's because I was covering a maternity leave position. So my manager had gone on leave, and I took over for her. And that was a huge step change for me in my career. It made such a difference for me. It's why I'm here in the UK now, because it meant that I got exposure to our global team. They got to know me. When a position came up, I was able to take that on. I was a person, that they could say, oh yeah, I've seen her work and I know what she can do. And I wouldn't have had that opportunity necessarily if someone hadn't had a baby. So I think it makes a difference in a lot of people's careers, men and women, when they get the chance to sort of be tested and step into those opportunities. And it's, for a period of time, and it lets them, try it out, and hopefully really shine. And I think that's something that, should definitely be part of the conversation. And I know it is in our organization, but yeah, just one that I'm really passionate about, and that I always think, we need to think about who is this also a development opportunity for, and how can we really maximize it, not just for the person who's going off, but for the team, around them.
Totally. So Ricardo, I see we have some questions trickling in from the audience. So I'm going to raise the question, which I think is connected to what I would like you to talk about next is, I think what we are beginning to see a lot, partially also thanks to COVID, but even before that, and you touched on this artificial separation between work life, personal life is just collapsing on its head, right? So the question which Elizabeth has in the chat was, how do you bring people on board who might not recognize the need to bring your whole self to work or actively choose not to share? So I wonder if you could respond to that question also using the lens of the business case for change making. Why does it make the business sense to invest your employees to be change makers?
And this is a very good question, because when I had the idea of Mom, I could have chosen the way of nonprofit, so like advocacy, which is a very relevant way. I was coming from a corporate world. That's the word I am confident with. That's the word I know. And I knew how powerful the highways of the market can be. So I had to find a reason for companies to buy this idea. I had to find the selling proposition of selling something which transforms maternity in a master in soft skills. And along these years, because it's been 10 years, I've been in this journey more or less. What I really learned is that there is a very strong need from the companies, huge need, which has a market of hundreds of billions of euros, which is training. And as we've seen, training soft skills is the priority number one and will be in the next years. But the way we learn and the way we are trained on soft skills is quite obsolete, is quite old. It didn't really get renewed. We are renewing the tools. We are starting to embed technology, but we're not changing the way we learn accordingly to the complexity of our lives. So this is not just about using technology. This is about a different way of learning that creates a business case for companies to buy life-based learning. So a learning which is based on life. And on this, I think I was reading yesterday, this research, which is very interesting because it's an analysis of 20 years of research of how do people learn. Because we have been studying this. I mean, our brain is root for learning. We learn normally, naturally. But we know from results that when we go to trainings, we don't learn as much as we could. And actually people are disengaged, are demotivated, they don't really transform those trainings into results. And there was this paragraph that I will read to you, which is I think it's very nice in this research is, learners seek to learn. They transform what they receive from instruction and create and construct knowledge in their own minds. Thus, what the learner brings to the instructional situation in prior knowledge and cognitive skills is of crucial importance. Although there is a variety of learner characteristics that influence learning and instruction, two of the most important are cognitive skills and motivation. So the point is that people are not empty containers. The most effective training is the one that makes room for their own lives, their own experiences, because they're not empty container. And what we have seen in these 10 years, and today we have 15,000 people being trained by life-based learning, not just mothers, but also fathers, caregivers, and what we call transitioners. So people who are going through any kind of transition, they are ready to learn because they're in a moment in time in which their brain is actively going back into learning mode, and they have needs which are connected to learning. So transitions are key for learning. And what we've seen with them, and because it's digital, we can see a lot, we can transform all this knowledge in data, is that what happens when learning is triggered and practiced in life events is that it becomes more relevant for people because they see this is about them, so they are in the picture. It grows the motivation because they are going through a phase in which they need that. They need to know that. They need to have that kind of information. They need to realize what resources they have at hand. And it gives one of the most precious components of trainings, which is feedback. We know that learning works when you have constant feedback and you can see how effective you are. And imagine, when you practice skills in your daily life, the feedback you get is absolutely punctual, continuous, and from people you care about and from situations you care about. So all those characteristics are impossible to transform into traditional training, but they're possible to become the new way of learning of people. And this is what we are building with the primary and still in front of us objective to change the way work and life are seen together. You're muted.
Yeah, it's fascinating you said that, Ricarda, about motivation. I was talking to an Ashoka fellow yesterday who works with families and empathy, and she made a statement which stayed with me. She said, you will drop a meeting in the White House to go if your children needs you, right? Like it's such a primordial force which we carry as it's an evolutionary force, right? The need to take care of the younger ones. So it is interesting to connect what you just said to that Gallup poll study, which we said around employees not feeling engaged in the workspace, to talk about the best way to motivate them is one way to motivate them is to think about how can they learn these new skills in a way which also supports their children to thrive in this rapidly changing world, right? So Ashoka's work, we've built out a product exactly based on that insight where we realized, if children and young people and adults needs to the skills they need to thrive in a world. They need to master the skills to engage with change itself, and we call them the change maker skills. And what we also realized was the best people who can support children and young people and adults to be change makers are change makers themselves. So then we came up with this idea of we built out this program called Your Kids, which is a 90-minute experiential workshop, which we actually do inside companies to help their employees to understand the urgency to support their children to be change makers. But the best way they can support the children to be change makers are being change makers themselves. So that was that flip in thinking, is to say which manager wouldn't, or leader wouldn't want their employees to practice empathy, take risks, be collegial, work in team of teams, etc. So it's that balance we are trying to figure out, is to say you're doing all these, you're learning all these with your children. They're teaching you every single day. And it's an opportunity for you to translate your learning from your personal life, caring for people, to help the company and the team meet their strategic goals.
Just to add, 54% of our participants who will also participate to our joint program soon in the future, I hope, the 54% of them realize they have talents that they are not using, and they can bring them to work. And think of the search for talent we have in companies. But people do have talents that they are not showing at work because they think they are not invited to do so.
Right. Ricardo, there is a request from the audience about sharing the name and the authors, if you could help. Oh, you've already done that. So maybe there is a question again. Maybe Alison, you can take a shot at this. How do we, actually you are master at this question. How do you balance raising children to explore and experiment, break out of conventional frames for success, and be a change maker, and being so far off the conventional frame that it becomes difficult to adapt to the society as it is? So it's basically saying, how do you raise your child in such a way that they can thrive in this new world, which may be slightly different from the conventional definition of success our parents had for us? Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, Vipin, you talked a little bit about this before we started the session, the sort of like our parents' views of what's successful, and then what maybe ours are. And I'm sure our children's will be even different from our own. I think, what, I wouldn't say at all I'm an expert in this. I'm still very early in that parenting journey with a little one. So hopefully I can reflect back in 20, 30 years and say that I was able to do that. But I think it's about, really helping your children cultivate those what we might call softer or human skills. In particular, I think resilience is such a key one. I think, as you said, that the pace of change keeps, increasing. We're going to be faced with sort of new things coming at us all the time. And I think if we can help children and really anyone around us cultivate that resilience, and just sort of go, right, okay, this is, something interesting, different, scary, because change can feel really scary, and sort of help them develop a toolkit to be resilient and to deal with that change and to respond to it in a way that's super positive. Because I think if they have that toolkit, no matter what the world looks like, they should be successful. And as much as, I want them to maybe go to a great school and get a great job, I think ultimately, if my little one is happy, and enjoys, his life, and feels like for him, he's had whatever level of success he wants, then I'll be happy. And I think resilience is such a key to that, and not sort of be bounced back by the challenges that are happening. Does that answer your question?
It does, and I'm going to build, if I may, I'm going to build on that slightly and say resilience and creativity and wonder. But there is something unique which our parents never had to worry about when they were raising us, which is to say, for us and for this next generation of children who's growing up, the capacity to learn to be comfortable with not knowing, the capacity to be comfortable with being uncomfortable, right? Like that, because that's fast how the change is happening. So how do you build that inner resilience to help to stand on your own ground and your own feet, even though your life constantly keeps throwing at you all kinds of puzzle pieces, right? Like well, I'll talk about my parents. Both my parents were bankers. They worked in the bank. That's the only job they have known, and they're retired now, right? Like think about the number of jobs we have already had just in this phase in our life. And now then think about that job situation for our children, right? Like that exponential pace of change it just fascinates me personally, but I also think it is just truly believe that the capacity to engage with change is becoming a critical skill for all of us to master. And the more we can help our children to practice those skills and ourselves to practice those change, life becomes we thrive in life and not just survive or adapt to life itself. So there's a couple of questions, but I'm also mindful of time. Ricarda, one of the things which really inspires me about your work is the simplicity of your intervention when you said maternity as masters, right? Like I distinctly remember a couple of years ago when I heard it for the first time, I was like, why hasn't anyone thought about this before, right? Like that was my intuitive reaction. So if you could touch on, just for the people who are listening, one of the things we wanted to share with you is this innovation which Ashoka and Ricarda's organization LifeEd has come together to think about how can we support our children and our employees to be powerful change makers. So Ricarda, if you could can I just draw you in to talk a bit more about the platform, and then I can talk about the masters.
Yeah, so the methodology has scientific basis and it does work, but it had the limit that how many people can you reach and how long can you stay with them if you just meet them in a classroom for a day. So in this sense, the digital world has been incredibly important. And that's why I think it's important to use technology, but not to substitute, but to integrate what we do, to empower what we do. So nowadays, our companies access a platform. They invite their employees to participate to the programs, and to which we just added. We're adding in these days our Changemaker program, which is amazing for parents. I think it's the perfect way. The workshop you mentioned is the perfect way for engaging families and parents that are going through multiple transitions, and they can address them with a different mindset. So the company decide who they want to include in the program, and they send an invitation, and those people access the platform, which has modules. And in the modules, people receive some knowledge, so they get some inspiration on the skills, the mindset, the change, and they connect this information to the real life through questions. They receive questions that help them think about how does this translate into your life. If we speak about empathy, can you think of how of becoming a parent changed the way you use empathy? What new behaviors are you using? Where are you more effective? Where are you more empathetic, at home or at work, and why? So the kind of exercise we did before. Why am I better at saying no in the office than at home? What's the difference? How can I transfer the skills from one place to the other? So this is the digital module. And then you are sent to practice in real life. So we receive real life mission that allow you to get away from the computer, which for example today is vital, and just go and have your own life. Don't add anything else. You don't need to have extra sailing schools or extra whatever. You just go and do what you would normally do, but you do it with a different level of awareness. And you come back and complete your real life mission by telling us, how did it go? What behaviors did you put in place? Did they work? And at the same time, we're using this information to collect data and give back to the company more data about in an aggregated way, so with respect to privacy, but in an aggregated way, companies will discover much more about their employees, much more about their characteristics, their dimensions, their values, their skills, and their talents, because people are opening this perspective to their whole life. So today we have around 100 companies using this kind of programs. We have, as I said, thousands of employees with different life roles, life and then work roles going through it. So we have also every kind of professional level, from manager to employee to consultant, because this approach is universal. It works from Japan to South Africa to Italy to the UK, because it's about looking at your own life in a different way. I don't know if I was clear, because when I try to explain the background, I'm always a bit...
No, thank you. But for those of you who are listening and who are curious, do check out. Shafat will be sending you a brochure about the link. It's a phenomenal platform, and it is really...
This means I wasn't clear.
No, I'm saying and to be clear, Ricarda, it's just phenomenal the way they have been designed, which is intuitive learning, but also gets to reach large numbers of people. So what we have, our partnership with Ricarda's organization, is to be designed a Masters in Change-Making program. It's a 3-part module which employees can do at their own pace. The first one is to really help them understand that the world is changing and they need a new set of skills to thrive, both as parents and as employees. The second skill is to get them to practice these skills, but they do it as a family, right? So that's fun. You're not just doing this inside on the front of a computer, you're doing it with your children, but it also helps parents and deepen their relationship with their children. And the third piece is to talk about how can they then raise change maker families? How can you practice the skills at home? And those skills, how can you translate that into your workplace with your team so that you can help your teams and your company meet their strategic goals? So we just want to leave you with that. Alison, Ricardo, I just want to, it's time, we are about to end time. I want to tie this up together. Any final comments, thoughts, reflections? Are you guys okay?
I would just say, maybe take that curiosity that we talked about, and start, in your life to think about how what you do sort of in what we might call your personal life actually enriches you and makes you better in the workplace, and have those conversations in your workplace. So don't, feel shy to bring in, I had this experience yesterday, or I learned this actually from my child or from my parent, or another person I care for, and just start to have that dialogue a bit more, because I think we are all change makers, and the future is not, this set thing that we don't have control over. And if we start having that dialogue, I think that, we start to change exactly that collapse those walls between, the personal, and start to help people bring their whole selves into work. But we all have to do that. And we can do that by making sure we bring the personal into the workplace.
Yeah.
And on my side, I want to tell you, I think this has become urgent. So the other day I was in a conference where they mentioned profit with purpose as a segment of investments. And I think we should really ask ourselves if it still makes sense to have profit without purpose. I think that we are realizing how urgent the change is, and we all have the power to make something happen. I think we have the power and the responsibility and the joy to do it. So thank you for being here, and I really believe we will make a change together.
Perfect. Thank you, Ricarda. Thank you, Alison. So if there's one thing we want to invite you to take away from it, is to just, from our conversation today, is just to remember that the framework is changing. It's not that we have a choice here. The framework is changing, and that our children and the parenting work which we do has valuable insights and learnings and skills which we can then translate into the workplace, and vice versa. Shafat will follow up with some materials. If you're interested in having this conversation and bringing it into your company, whether it is your kids, which is a 90-minute experiential workshop, or the Ricarda's platform, we would be delighted to have the conversation. Alison, Ricarda, thank you very much. This was